So we're back with part 2 of the Genesis Mama tutorial. Where we left off, I just kind of changed the sync on the different oscillators. I was just checking the volumes to see, how much of a difference it makes. One of the things that I was contemplating, and this is actually kind of where we left off in the video, is my FM amount on this oscillator. Is how much does it really matter? And so again, in the interest of, I'm going to make a change and see if it gets closer, because I am pretty close as it is right now, but I feel like I can get better. So I'm going to turn this off, set this to 0, and I want to see if it's closer or not than what I've got when I listen to the actual sound. So here's kind of the difference. And personally, I think it's fine without any FM on it. Okay, I'm fine with that. So the next thing I want to focus on, after I save it, is the effects. So there's definitely some sort of verb happening that kind of just draws it out a little bit. Now, I'm thinking two things. I'm thinking, one, this sound is a little thin on the bottom end. So here, let me adjust the camera here a little bit. No, that's not really helping. Let me see if this is better. Yeah, it seems like it might be a little bit better. There. Okay. So what I'm thinking in terms of effects are, the low end is really thin. So while I have the tone is thin sounding still. And if we listen to this one, okay, so I want to bring out the bottom end, and that might require me to do something like, I'm not going to say add another oscillator necessarily, but I might need to do something with the lower end. So I'm going to, in terms of effects, I'm going to bring in a compressor, and in this time I'm actually going to bring in a multiband compressor. That way I can choose to compress, and I don't mean compresses and shrink the low end, but a compressor tends to do things like, it'll make things louder, and so what I can do is I can bring out the lower end and leave the higher end kind of a little bit more shallow. That way it brings out that depth, but it still brings the whole volume overall up. Now I also have a multiband compressor versus a stereo multiband compressor. The sound isn't in stereo yet. I don't hear any stereo. It sounds like it's a single track, so I'm going to leave this as is. That's fine. And then the next thing is I want to feed that into my reverb. And by default, I start out often, under reverbs, under overb. So I'm going to just see what that sounds like. So let's talk about our routing. In fact, okay, so we're good. All right, so sounds better already. Okay, but here's what I'm talking about. When I hear this, it sounds similar, but it's not quite right. So I'm going to take a look at my multiband compressor, and I'm going to take a look at my different bands. So you have the ability to solo these bands to hear the frequency range that you're working with. So, for example, because I've got my low-pass filter, everything above this range is being it's not irrelevant, or it's not relevant rather. So I don't even need to worry about band 4. What I'm most worried about is this band. So hear how quiet that is? So I'm going to bring that volume up actually. So this is the range of how low or how high are we going to kind of grab this. I'm going to bring the whole thing up. And to make it more dramatic, I'm going to take all of the other ones down. So for example, if I bring the gains down overall, so let's say -6, I'll do -6, -6, around there. Now what I want to do is I want to output higher overall. So what it's really doing is it's bringing the bass out even more. What I don't want to do is I don't want to bring out the bass so much that it distorts. When it comes to filters and compressors and that kind of thing, it's the mentality of crap in and crap out. The way I'm thinking is if I put a good quality signal into this compressor, the compressor really should be doing next to no work. I'm making it do a lot of stuff, right? I'm making it do a lot of work, and it's unnecessary. So what I've got here is effectively I've got 6 dB gain overall plus 18 in this lower range. Now, just based off of the nature of the sound, there's no real good way that I think I could probably bring it out even more unless I use different waveforms that were more vocal based. So if I were to change over to the HD1, but I'm kind of stubborn. I'm not going to bother doing that. I'm gonna say the heck to the man, and I'm gonna do it this way. So, and it's already sounding better. So let's kind of compare. Okay, way better. Way better. So I'm going to save this. Okay, so round 2. I'm going to kind of rejig. I'm sorry, this is the very technical term for it. I'm going to review everything that I've done so far. Not everything necessarily, just the things that don't quite sound right. So for example, I feel like my LFO could be a little bit more impacting. So if I listen to this one, and this is the real one, and I listen to mine, I feel like mine's too flat. So what I want to do is I want to increase the amount or the impact that the LFO has. So I need to go to my pitch, and instead of 20, I'm going to change this to 0.30. Now I need to do it for both oscillators. So, and that sounds a little bit better. So let's compare. Okay, couple of things. It feels like to me that this is pretty darn close. I would be totally comfortable leaving it as it is. One thing that I will say is that it almost feels like the LFO starts off more impacting than it actually is. So, for example, it almost sounds like it's going from like the intensity of 50 or 60 down to 30. So let's listen. So I don't know if you're able to hear that as well. Maybe my mind is playing tricks, but it sounds like it's more wobbly at first and then settles down into a consistent LFO. So listen again. So the way I'm almost picturing it is I'm almost picturing it wobbling like this. So it's a big wobble and it flattens out to a little wobble. I could be wrong, but I want to try it. So the question here is, how do you think you might go about making this intensity follow a particular pattern. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to change how this LFO works, and I'm going to set it so that my AMS is going to be one of my EGs. So when I'm talking about EG, I'm pretty sure that means envelope generator. When I'm talking about AMS, I don't remember the acronym for that, but this is the thing that controls the amount. So that's what I'm thinking. So I'm going to go to EG3, and what I'm saying here, let me turn this off, and let me do the same thing over here. I'm not going to assign the EG just yet. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn the volume for EX1 off entirely. There. So I'm just listening to EX2, so I'm not confusing my sounds. Okay. So here when I go to EG3, so what I'm saying is LFO1 is controlling the speed, EG3 is controlling the intensity. So if I were to go to EG3 and just do this, now it should be totally flat. Now EG3 is currently set so that it's going to attack at 99% of its capability. It's technically 100%, I guess, because in the computer world, 0 counts as well. So it's going to attack at its complete ability. It's going to drop down to 75% of its ability, and then when I let go, it's going to release gradually. Well, I agree with almost all of that, except if it goes from 99 to 75, I feel like that's kind of too little of a drop. I feel like the intensity, if I were to draw a line that goes up and down, and this is our center right here. If I were to draw a line that goes up and down in terms of what I think I'm hearing, I feel it's going from like 100% down to maybe 50%. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this down to 50. I'm going to drop this down to 50. And the sustain, or excuse me, the release can stay exactly how it is. Now what I can do is when I go back to here, I've assigned EG3 as my control parameter. It's going to control how much how much of this is being impacted. So our intensity, if I were to set this to 60, 0.6 rather, what's going to happen is EG3 is going to say, okay, this initial attack is going to be 100 or plus 99, and then it's going to drop down to, over a period of time, down to 50%, or half of the LFO's ability. Excuse me, I'm jumping all over the place here. And then 0.6 is the amount that we're talking about. So let me give you an example. So it's more drastic if you make this a bigger number. Alright, this isn't changing at all. So either I've done something wrong, or like maybe I'm using the wrong one. So let me try this. Yeah, that's better. So here, all it is that the intensity, this is the default intensity, where this is the intensity after your joystick and your AMS source has been defined. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 0.6. It sounds like it could be even bigger than that. No, not that much. I need it to settle down a little bit more. See, that's a little bit better. But under the EG, I want this to settle down even more. Like, I like the initial attack, but the EG needs to bring it down even more. So I'm going to go to 35. Here. And see how quickly it settles down? Well, I like that, except I want this to be pulled over to the right. So let's try 65. I like it. I think that's good. It might be still a little bit more intense, just a little bit. Let's try that. Now let's listen to the original. Okay, so the way I see it, or the way I hear it, is that this attack is actually too high. But instead of going back and messing with everything else, I'm just going to bring this attack level down some. So let's try 75. You know what? I am very comfortable with that. I think that's great. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to duplicate all of this stuff on my other oscillator now. So if I go to my other oscillator, we do the same thing here. So let's see. We've got oscillator pitch. It's 0.75, 0.75, and we have assigned it to EG3. Let's go to EG3. Now for both oscillators, they're slightly different now. So oscillator 2 at 75, 40, 40. So let's go 75, 40, 40. And then let's go to the second row, 65, 30, 20. So let's try 65, 30, 20. And now I need to turn the volume back on for my oscillators on 1. Yeah, so let's try this. I like it. I'm a fan. Alright. I'm cool with that. I'm gonna write it. Now, here's where one of the more critical processes comes in. I'm going to leave this sound as it is. Oh, you know what? Hang on a second. No, we're good. I was worried about the attack. So see the attack 75, and I was like, oh, did I do this for both oscillators? Anyway, I digress. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave this sound for the next few minutes. I'm going to work on the second sound. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this sound later, and this is a critical step, is to come back to it with a fresh set of ears and say, is this still accurate? Is this still close to what I thought it was? What am I missing? And sometimes all you need is just to kind of step out of the room, go grab something to eat or drink. In this case, I'm kind of a masochist. I'm going to just start working on a totally different sound altogether, and then I'm going to come back to this one, and it'll still kind of, provide the same effect, which is, does this still sound accurate? Are there things that I'm now hearing that I didn't hear before? Does the filter need to be opened more? Are the effects too dry? Are they too wet? Do I need more compression? And those kinds of things. So, here I go. Cool. Sounds good. Let's go to the next sound. Starting from scratch again. So now we're going to go to the next one, which is the, let's see, what notes? Something like that, I think. That sounds like a 7. Okay, so I'm hearing this chopping sound. Now, listening to it, I'm also hearing a vowel that's going E-U. So it's going E-U, which means I'm hearing like a filter closing quickly. So if you listen again, listen to the filter that's closing. So the sound's clearly polyphonic. It has no release, or it's a very, very fast release, rather. Its attack is very high. And just kind of knowing the characteristic of how the virtual analog sound is, I'm actually not going to use an analog synth here. I'm going to use the MS-20 because I'm familiar with how the filters kind of sound. So let's try this one. So right off the bat, I'm going to use saw and pulse. I'm going to turn this down. So what I'm doing here is I'm controlling, basically more or less, we've got our EG2, so effects generator 2 external. And if we go to EG2, we can see kind of the details surrounding it. I'm going to basically turn down how much this is controlling and then turn this frequency up. Okay, so let's listen to the original. Okay, so it's more like more open. Okay, so it is more open, except it closes way faster. So I'm going to turn this back up. Now what I need to do is go into my mod EG, and this envelope generator 2 is describing what's happening under here. So what we're doing is we're taking all this stuff and we're feeding it into here. And now that we fed it into here, we get to control what it does. So my attack time is very fast. My decay time is very, very fast as well. Okay, that's cool. Now I need to go back and change the waveforms because it's a different sound altogether. Like if you actually listen really close, I'm hearing a fifth in there, or a fourth rather. No, I'm not. I'm hearing a fifth. So I almost get the impression that this could have a 5 stacked on it, and then this one has a 5 stacked on it as well. So I'm going to try that and see what that sounds like. So let's see. Yeah, let's see what happens. Yeah, but the volume's too loud. Let me turn that way down. It's subtle, right? Like... Okay. So let me see. This is where I just kind of experiment a little bit. I feel like this filter isn't fast enough. Let me try that faster. This one. Okay, something's still not right. This pitch is still too low. It's the right interval, but it's too low. So I'm going to bump it up an octave. So it sounds better now, but I need to bring out the volume. Okay, so what I've done is I could hear that the pitch here is the fifth, and I say the fifth, I mean the fifth in terms of, you know, in a scalular fashion. This is the fifth note. It's a seventh semitone. That five, like that. But the scale wasn't correct. So if I were to go like here, let me turn this down so you can hear what I mean. Okay, so now how much do I want it to breathe? So I'm listening, I'm imagining the sound is coming out of a person's mouth, and I just imagine how big, if is it in like a E or an O sound or a U sound? So a E, O, U, and to kind of compare like how open is a filter. Okay, I think that's all right. Let me detune this ever so slightly, just so we get a little bit of resonance, a little bit more of that bite. And the other thing is, this analog, what this does is this varies the pitch slightly. So on an actual analog synth, your pitch is never going to be absolutely perfect until you get it warmed up, and even then it's still going to vary a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to turn this analog off so it's a perfect pitch every single time. If I were to do this, you can hear every time I put voltage, and I say voltage, it's like it's a real analog. It's varying slightly. If I turn this down to nothing, it's perfect every time. Okay, not so bad. I'm still not happy with the sound though. Don't get me wrong, I think it's close, but it's not quite there yet. So I'm going to write this program as, let me call it Mama or Genesis. Here, let's. I'm going to call this Choppy. There we go. All right, I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm going to come back for part 3, where I'm going to look at how can I get this even closer. So stick around.